to pay 3.45 billion Deutsche Marks to Holocaust survivors in 1952. In contrast, Black Americans are the only group that has not received reparations for state-sanctioned racial discrimination, although slavery facilitated the accumulation of immense wealth for some white families. The United States had several opportunities to address the legacy of slavery, but consistently missed these chances to fulfill the promise of the American dream. Initially, the 40 acres and a mule policy was proposed, which was subsequently revoked. Immediately after the Civil War, there was a pivotal opportunity for the United States to atone for slavery. Union leaders, including General William Sherman, advocated for granting each black family 40 acres of land. General Sherman issued Field Order 15, assigning 400,000 acres of confiscated Confederate land to black families, with some also receiving mules. However, President Andrew Johnson rescinded Field Order 15 after President Abraham Lincoln's assassination, returning the land to former slave owners. Instead of providing the means for black Americans to sustain themselves, the federal government empowered former enslavers. In some instances, former slave owners were even compensated for the loss of their enslaved property. Many black Americans, with limited employment options, returned to the same land as sharecroppers, effectively working for the very individuals who had once enslaved them. Later, in the 1930s, the New Deal emerged as the United States grappled with the aftermath of the 1929 stock market crash and the Great Depression. President Franklin Roosevelt implemented the New Deal, which included policies estimated to have cost about $50 billion at the time, equivalent to roughly $50 trillion today. Two crucial elements of the New Deal, the GI Bill and Social Security, failed to address racial injustices adequately. Black veterans of World War II were unable to fully access post-war benefits like their white counterparts due to local implementation of the GI Bill, hindered by racial housing covenants and redlining. Meanwhile, Social Security excluded two professions that could have significantly improved equity in America: domestic and farm workers. This exclusion effectively marginalized 60% of black workers nationwide and 75% in southern states who worked in these occupations. These provisions were included in the legislation at the expense of black veterans and workers to aid the predominantly white population during the Great Depression. While reparations have been granted to various marginalized groups, the federal government has consistently refrained from providing similar redress for black Americans. To fulfill its commitment to closing the racial wealth gap and upholding the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the U.S. must enact a comprehensive federal reparations plan for black Americans. The U.S. government has been escaping from paying reparation because it could not amass such a large amount. However, now, as the feasible option exists, only ill intention becomes the reason why reparation is not being paid. The central idea has to be to extract money from those who hold wealth and land from former slave owners. Tracing this out has never been easier than today. Former slave owners and their wealth and land can be traced to find those who inherited them. Taxes can then be imposed on them to contribute to a reparation fund. Reparation is indeed practical and feasible. However, it has not received as much attention as it deserves. It's concerning that most white Americans don't support reparations, displaying racist sentiments. Rejecting the idea of giving up wealth and land inherited from former slave owners works as a moral litmus test. They want to hold that wealth that was amassed after exploitation, but do not want to pay reparation. It raises concerns about how black Americans will survive and thrive in a country that only considers white Americans as its citizens. Recently, in May 2023, Representative Cori Bush put forth a bill addressing reparations for black Americans, advocating for $14 trillion in restitution to address the damages inflicted by slavery in the Jim Crow era. Known as the Reparations Now bill, this recent proposal adds to the series of previous attempts by Democratic representatives to provide compensation for the historical injustices faced by black Americans over many generations. According to a Reuters survey, a majority of Democrats, approximately 58%, expressed support for reparations, while only 18% of Republicans share this view. Additionally, The survey revealed that 74% of Black Americans favor reparations, in contrast to 26% of white Americans. In California, the task force to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans presented its final report to the California legislature. This comprehensive report extensively examined the enduring impact of slavery on African Americans and the consequent harm that continues to permeate American society. The report suggests a comprehensive reparations plan, outlining over 115 recommendations for addressing the injustices endured by those affected. While the report advocated for monetary compensation for those impacted, it refrained from specifying a particular sum, leaving the determination of the amount to the discretion of lawmakers. What do you think now? Will slavery reparation be paid, or it's still an obscure idea? What if we say that the U.S. government